Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And finally, we're talking about something we haven't been able to say in months: back-to-back home wins.
True.
Tottenham 3, Slavia Prague 0. Confident Champions League performance, clean sheet, and dare I say it, momentum maybe slowly starting to build under Thomas Frank. So let's break it all down. Jack, I mean, tonight felt like another step in the right direction. Not perfect, not electric by any means or any stretch of the imagination from start to finish, but job done. And we never really looked like losing control of that game, which is something we haven't been able to say too often this season. Is momentum starting to quietly build under Thomas Frank, or is it still too early to call?
I think if you wanted to be a huge optimist, you could definitely say that. Like, I think pressure at least has been taken off. I don't think anybody could, fault that. Like, going into, of course, the Brentford game, I do think there's sizable amount of pressure on him to deliver 3 points, but then also to deliver a good performance. We got both. So he took a little pressure off himself. And then this game, it was kind of just more of the same, really. Like, want to see 3 points, a must-win game in the Champions League if we have any chance of finishing in the top 8. And then also considering it is only a Slavia Prague, no offense to them, but I think we want to see a repeat of a good performance as well with attacking football. And that's been the big question mark about Thomas Frank is can he deliver and take the handbrake off and allow these players to express themselves and play some more attacking football? I think we were able to see that today. So is momentum being gathered? Potentially, but we'll see, of course, against Forest. And if we're able to put in anything similar to what we did against Brentford, or even tonight against Forest side, and pick up a win, I think definitely momentum is gathered. But I think he's already starting to take some pressure off himself, at least.
I think for me, Jack, it was very encouraging to see us try and go at Slavia Prague the same way we did to Brentford. I think if we would have reverted to type and showed them a bit more respect, I think maybe he would have lost a lot of the sort of momentum or even belief
Right.
from the fan base that he's built up over the last week. Like that point away to Newcastle, that's a good solid point. I know we weren't great on the day, but we're not good up there in general. To take a
Yeah,
point
sure.
away from that was absolutely massive. Then to beat Brentford in the style that we did, 16 shots on goal, huge. And then double down tonight. Now, look, he's still not out of the woods in my eyes. We got to double down against Nottingham Forest, win that. Then all of a sudden, I think then the noise does quieten down and he does get a bit more belief and buy-in back in from him. Because for me, I understand, Jack, that everything's not going to be rosy, everything's not going to be perfect, and not every game we're going to win. But at least I want to see the intent to try and go and win games. And this, I can get behind him when he does drop points. I can sort of give him a bit more time to keep working on things and be more patient for transfer windows to come around because I'm seeing the intent there, and hopefully he's learnt that over the last couple of games that this style of football and going at the opposition will go a long way to not only appease the players on the pitch because they've asked to play this way, but also in terms of the Spurs fan base as well. And I think he's done himself really well building up the momentum this week, and hopefully it can continue into the Nottingham Forest game and we can get another win there. But I think that game he's got to win as well, in my eyes, to sort of continue getting that belief from me behind him. But Jack, I mean, Thomas Frank made just 2 changes tonight. Paulinia and Udebur coming in. And Udebur nearly got the match off to a great start within a minute. Great low cross. Now, Richarlison should have scored. Hit it straight at the goalkeeper any other side, and it's in the back of the net. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. But in my opinion, Jack, I don't think Udebur really offered too much outside of that tonight. Did he do enough to get himself in at that left wing spot against Nottingham Forest, or would you put Colin Mawani back in there?
No, definitely not. I think you have to probably continue with Richarlison and Kolo Muani, also because knowing that Forest are a Sean Dyche physical team, they're going to be a team where you imagine they could sit back against us, try to crowd the penalty area, try to crowd the midfield,
Mm.
having maybe 2 physical players up front in the case of Colomolani and Richarlison might just be the better way to go about it.
Yeah.
And that's even if, let's say, Wilson Odebear had a good game tonight. But yeah, it felt like Richarlison robbed him maybe of 1 or 2 assists. I think there was another opportunity where I think Odebear did put in another good ball in for Richarlison. I don't think Richie maybe made the most of it, but Wilson kind of had a mixed bag. Like maybe if he did put that in the back of the net, then, he's just off to a flyer. I think the team could have been off to a flyer if we scored that goal inside 30 seconds. Maybe we're talking about a whole different scoreline. We could be talking about 6 goals maybe, because then maybe the team relaxes, sort of starts to know that, what, we have this team for the taking. That it felt like they started to get a little bit nervous with all the chances they were wasting, which did start first off with Richarlison. But yeah, Dave, I think you have to go with Colin Mwani pretty much no matter what, even if Wilson Odebear had a good game tonight. you don't want to see Thomas Frank, change up the lineup too much, and he's got to stick with some of his best players. And Kolo Muani is easily for me been one of his best players so far.
And don't get me wrong, I was a little bit frustrated that he did take Mwani out of the lineup and bring Udabur in. Now, look, at the end of the day, 3-0, we got away with it. We were always going to get away with it. But with Udabur, I think he had his moments tonight, Jack, in terms of, like I said, the opening minute could have easily had an assist. And then also he had a chance, I think, was created by, I think, Mwani. I could be wrong, maybe Simmons. That maybe he should have done better with. And I think he had his moments, but I don't think he offered anywhere near enough throughout the game to really earn that start against Nottingham Forest. I want to see Mwani come back in there, because with Mwani, we just look better with him down that left-hand side. We look far more balanced. We're able to sustain attacks a lot more. And I just think he's got better end product right now, Mwani. So I think he has to go back in there against Nottingham Forest. And to your point, you want them physical players in there against Forest, because Sean Dyche, he's going to get them to try and rough us up, play all of his physical players. So I think you're absolutely spot on in that regard. Look, it's impossible to avoid talking about Xavi Simons yet again. It seems like we're talking about more than the time now, Jack, but he continues to transform this team every single time he starts. Spurs look far more dangerous. Again, another clean sheet off the back of him starting. Ironically, I keep saying this, but we concede less when he starts. And I think it's now our last 8 wins in across all competitions have all come when this guy has started, which is starting to show how important he is becoming to this team. Look, tonight we've seen progressive passing, link-up play, a lot of energy, willingness to drive at defenders, works incredibly hard out of possession as well, which I think needs to be highlighted when it comes to him, because usually with number 10s, you're carrying them because they're a bit lightweight or they shy away from that side of the game. With him, you're not, so you can go away from home playing him in that position, which is huge for me. And look, I know maybe he didn't hit Brentford levels in terms of the performance, but he was still miles ahead of most of our attacking players on the pitch tonight, which says something about the guy. He wins the penalty, also scores it, comes away with man the match. Is Xavi Simons finally starting to look comfortable in a Spurs jersey now, Jack?
I think he looks very comfortable. I thought he looked very comfortable against Brentford. And I think today he was really flexing his stuff. It looked almost too easy for him out there. I feel like against a Slavia Praha, he was just showing absolute different levels compared to them. And also even just compared to the rest of our players. So, I wouldn't really fault Xavi Simons for being sloppy in the final third, like you said, with some of the other players. I wouldn't necessarily fault him with taking the wrong option or not playing the right pass like Kudus might have tonight, and maybe Wilson Odebear and some others on the day. I thought, like you say, maybe it wasn't as scintillating, maybe his performance tonight as it might have been against Brentford, but I would still say pretty faultless performance from him. I don't really think he put much of a foot wrong. I thought everything, once again, maybe similar to Brentford, seemed to flow through him. When the ball went to him, he made a nice cushion pass, or he played the right ball in behind for someone, or he was able to get out of a tricky situation with, a bit of genius or intelligence. And I'm just really enjoying watching him play. I felt like every time we saw him receive the ball, he does sort of keep you on the edge of your seat. You're kind of looking for something, to be happening once the ball gets near him. And I think we saw that from him. I think he had, I just don't know if there was any moment in the game where I felt like I even had any frustration with the guy with maybe a bad decision or a bad touch or anything. Like, he was just silky. Maybe that's the other word that maybe we should be saying. He's starting to really show that silkiness to his game that a number 10 should, and we know he can. And he's reminding me now of the player that we probably saw for the Netherlands team, for PSV Eindhoven, and for Leipzig. He's putting in those levels of performances recently.
100%, Jack. And I think, after the Brentford game, you could have easily made the case, it's just a once-off. But the fact that he's doubled down, and putting another sort of all-around really good performance tonight, I think maybe shows signs that he is starting to become a bit more comfortable in the Tottenham jersey and within this system. Now, of course, I think Frank deserves a bit of credit tonight. I think he hasn't helped Xavi Simons settle, but, off the back of Brentford, he put his trust in him tonight. Another 90 minutes completed, another man-of-the-match performance, another goal and assist tonight from Xavi Simons, because he did win his penalty, so I'm counting that as an assist towards him as well. And I think you're really starting to see the guys settle in. But what I love about it, Jack, is you're right, he does bring that bit of elegance to this Tottenham side, and it's just different things that he does. One thing I love is he doesn't slow down the attack like we've seen a lot of Spurs midfielders do, in recent years. It's one touch, keeps that ball moving, but it's always in a forward momentum. It's played in behind for people. How many times tonight were people looking for the ball to feet and he put it in behind saying, lazy, Messi, get in behind. That's where the space is. Feeds it. That one-touch pass, that 60-yard ball, literally straight onto Udeber's foot. Absolutely unbelievable. But then when he does lose the ball sometimes, he gets after it and he wins it back. And for me, you're really starting to see a guy start to feel comfortable, and that's going to be dangerous for teams going forward, because I'd argue since the Copenhagen, even against Man United, I thought he played pretty well that day. The performances are slowly starting to build, and what you're starting to see now is that end product, and that impact that he's starting to have on games. He's starting to imprint his own style and his own personality, and
I
for
agree.
me, I think Thomas Frank would be wise to build this tack around him moving forward. Start funneling the ball through him and let him dictate then what avenue we go at these teams. And not only that, another thing I love about him, Jack, even if the passing options ain't on, he drives at them. He doesn't shirk responsibility. He pass it backwards. He gets on the ball, runs at players, and tries to create space and open up things. And that's what you want from your number 10. And I'm really starting to take to Xavi Simons, considering I initially sort of had my skepticism around how long it was going to take him to settle in, and would he really be able to dictate Tottenham's forward play? But from what I've seen from the start of the season to now, I think I've seen more than enough to know you've got to start playing him, and he's a guy that you can play away from home because he's starting to look after himself a little bit. Anything else you want to say on Xavi before we move on?
I think you're right. Like, I think there were reasonable doubts, about how can he adjust to the physicality of the Premier League? Is he, taking advantage of some of the opportunities he's been given? I think at times it was a bit of both. I felt like Frank wasn't really doing the most to make him feel comfortable and make him feel like, he is being trusted. But at the same time, there were games when we kind of needed him to be better and he necessarily wasn't. But he took that chance against Brentford, in stride. And then I think fair play to Thomas Frank because he needed to give him another chance, again, even though maybe was a very beatable team in Slavia Prague. I think it was important. You just let Xavi Simons play again
Yeah,
to gather this confidence momentum. So hopefully we see him once again against Forest. And if he really performs against Forest, then he could maybe be the
exciting.
catalyst to changing our season
Yeah.
around, Xavi Simons.
100%, Jack. Couldn't agree more. But look, let's keep it moving. Little known fact here. Romero was involved in Tottenham's 100th Champions League goal, from that own goal that
Yeah.
I think Zima put in the back of his own net. But Romero did rise up and get that flick on and sort of cause that chaos. And look, we know that with Romero. He's good in the opposition box. He's absolutely brilliant defensively. But Jack, I don't actually want to talk about that goal or anything like that. I just want to throw that fun fact in there. But does Romero actually deserve more credit for how he leads the team in the build-up play and not just his defensive work? Because if you look at his passing range tonight,
Yeah.
at times drove out with the ball, ran forward with it, tried to make things happen. Is Romero now officially the best ball-playing centre-back in world football?
I think he always has been, at least for the
Yeah.
last couple of years. If you ask me, I think we really saw that under Ange. Actually, I think he was at times when other players in the midfield were going missing and weren't really playing the passes that we needed to break down teams. Romero could do it, and I think what Romero has is he has the Toby-esque ball over the top, which we saw a few times actually this
Yeah.
game, and I think we saw as well against Brentford. I think he played a few of them, but he always has had that really unique pass where he's able to just slide it on the floor, on the carpet, all the way through 3, 4 midfielders to break the lines of the opposition midfield. He's always been capable of that, but now he's mixing it in with a bit of those passes over the top of the back line. We saw him play for James Madison last season against Frankfurt
Yeah.
and against some other teams as well. I think today was also nice to see him show that because I forget if it was a pre-match buildup or a predicted lineup, but I said some of the other question marks I did have about Thomas Franco. I was like, we haven't really been seeing, Romero playing these passes, under him. And I think it was because the passes weren't there. So he really had no one to play it to. Romero was not afraid to play the difficult pass, but it just seemed like so many of these games, the movement was so static. There was no one really in the right areas to receive it. So Romero was forced often, it seemed like, to have to play sideways, have to play backwards when he's the last person on earth that really would want to do that. So
Mhm.
it's nice actually to finally see Romero's passing range being taken advantage of and utilized.
No, 100%. Because look, when it comes to Romero, he obviously gets a lot of praise for his defensive work. I think a stat came out after the Brentford game at the weekend. I think he's got the most recovery tackles in the Premier League. It shows how, and it's always highlighted how good he is defensively. And whenever we're missing him through injury, everyone always goes, "Oh, defensively is a huge miss," but no one really ever, bar maybe me and you, we have tried to highlight it quite a lot, how good the guy actually is in possession in terms of build-up play, being able to play out from the back, but also that passing range that he possesses. It just means that if teams do look to come and press you, like Slavia Prague tried to do in the first half, they tried to go man for man. You just get runners in behind. Romero will find you. I think he played, what was it, an absolute delicious one in behind for, I think it was Mohamed Kudus or Xavi Simmons. I can't remember exactly, but it was just inch perfect, weight perfect. When you actually look at Romero's all round game, you almost wish you had that player in the midfield. If we had that player in the deep line midfield sort of role, we would be absolutely cooking with his aggression, his passing range, his ability to be able to carry the ball. We would be absolutely cooking. And I think it's just important to actually highlight how good he was in possession at times tonight. And what I also loved is when them passes weren't on maybe towards the end of the first half and in the second half, no problem. He just goes on the ball, takes two players on, and then feeds it out to Mohamed Kudus. Absolutely brilliant performance in that regard from Christian Romero tonight. I think it's important to highlight that. And just two more maybe quick questions, Jack. I mean, Mathys Tel was brought into the Champions League squad ahead of today's game because of Dom Solanke, and they used this long-term injury rule to be able to make that change. So fair play. They obviously got the lawyers on the rule book to find whatever rule they can to make that change. What did you make of his impact today? He made his first Champions League appearance for Tottenham Hotspur. I'd argue, I think he looked bright. I think he showed plenty of talent when he got on the ball.
I think you have to credit his mentality, and it's not maybe the biggest talking point on the sheet of talking points of the
Yeah,
last few weeks, but I did mention to you, like, I do credit his mentality because whenever he has come on in recent games this season, he has shown that hunger and that willingness to want to show something to Thomas Frank. He's
yeah,
worked hard. He's carved out chances on his own. He's not afraid to take on his man, try to, register a shot, try to challenge the goalkeeper. I just think he's unlucky in that Kolomouani is pretty much a first name on the team sheet. Kudus is a first name on the team sheet. And then Richarlison, when he is frustrating, he still has found a way to find the back of the net. Maybe this game isn't the best example against the Slavia Prague, but in the Premier League, which you pointed out, Richarlison is somehow, some way, produced the goods and has been able to score. So Mathys Tel just probably has to continue to train hard, and whenever he is given these cameos, show to Thomas Frank that he's someone that he can trust to maybe put on off of the bench, especially maybe in a close game. And when maybe we're struggling to get shots on target, I would say maybe consider putting Mathys Tel on the pitch because
yeah,
he at least can get them on target compared
yeah.
to some of our other players. But I credit him. I mean, he looks hungry and he doesn't look like he's pouting or anything like that.
Mm.
He wants to show something to Frank. So fair
Well,
play to him.
to your point, Jack, I think that's actually where Matisse Tel deserves massive credit because, look, he sort of frustrated a lot of Spurs fans. He wasn't the answer in a time of need. And, he ended up getting dropped from Thomas Frank's Champions League squad. And then not on top of that, he also had the racial abuse after the Europa, the Super Cup and stuff like that. And it's been a difficult sort of period for Matisse Tel. And a young player like that, who's come from an academy like Bayern Munich, comes to Tottenham, hasn't worked out. It's very easy for them to sort of go, I'm not the problem. You're the problem. Sort of throw yourself around the place, throw a bit of an ego, throw a strop, look for every excuse to sort of get away from the situation. Where I admire the kid is the fact that he stand up and he's clearly fighting. Any minutes he get, he's clearly starting to try and take. And I absolutely admire that from the kid. And more of that, and I think you'll eventually endear yourself into the Spurs fans' hearts and maybe start to even have more of an impact on games. But I just thought maybe another little thing to mention there. But lastly, Jack, Spurs do sit eighth in the Champions League table. We've got ninth in the Champions League table. We've got Dortmund and Frankfurt left. Do you think we have enough about us to finish inside the top eight and avoid a playoff round?
I think Frankfurt are beatable. I know it's going to be away from home and it's a difficult place to go, but I don't think they're nearly as good as they were last season.
Mm.
So I think they're going to be more beatable than Dortmund. I think Dortmund is going to be a real test to this team because they've actually, in recent years, they've kind of fallen off a little bit. They're not really the Dortmund of old, but this season under Niko Kovac, they're actually one of the better teams in the Bundesliga and in the Champions League. They've been actually pretty fine so far. They have some decent players in the team. They work really hard. They're a team that does work exceptionally hard. So I think they're going to be an interesting team to come up against. And if we are able to register a win against them, I'm going to be really confident, actually, we can finish in the top eight. Jose, right, put up that stat saying that most team, or at least last season, the teams that finished in the top 8 had at least 15 or 16 points. If we get 9 points from these 3 games, the one, of course, 3 points from today, 3 points against Dortmund, and then against Frankfurt, we give ourselves every fighting chance of finishing in the top 8. And we benefited from some teams dropping points like Chelsea tonight as well. So just have to win these next 3 games, and then hopefully we can finish the top 8. And we technically, even though we probably should have lost to Monaco and Bodo Glimt, we actually would then finish off the Champions League campaigns undefeated, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's mad to
Or
think.
actually, except for
No,
PSG. What am I saying? Forget that point. Sorry,
well, I think
scratch it.
everyone's expecting that, though, to be fair. But I think these next 2 games are huge. You look at Dortmund; they're I think a point behind us, but yet they've got a game in hand. So if they win tomorrow, then they're 2 points ahead of us. So I think that game, in January, between the 2 sides is literally going to dictate who has a chance of getting out of the final 8 on the final day and who doesn't. So I actually think it's almost a decider. And if we can get a win there, then you go into Frankfurt. They're still scrapping to sort of get a playoff spot. So that's not going to be easy either. That's also going to be a difficult away day out there. But you know what? I think if we can approach the game the right way against Dortmund and put in an unbelievable performance, which we've shown we can do on Champions League nights in years gone by, then I think, I fancy us to be able to go out to Frankfurt and do enough to be able to get inside the top 8. And at the end of the day, I think there was a massive opportunity when the fixtures were announced and the way they fell, that the more difficult fixtures were towards the end of the campaign, for us to be able to get out inside the top 8. And the fact that we still have a chance, credit to the guys, considering that they're still trying to work things out along the way. But look, that's it from our post-match reaction. Get in the comment section below. Get your answers in terms of the performance. Are we starting to see maybe a little bit of momentum, some green shoots under Thomas Frank to be able to build on? Spurs scoring 100th goal in the Champions League, which is absolutely mad to say. Romero being the best ball-playing centre-back in world football. And also Xavi Simons. Surely he's got to be the guy we build that attack around now. Smash that like if you've enjoyed it. Smash the subscribe button if you're new and it's your first time feasting your eyes on these 2 beautiful men. And we'll see you back here later on, tomorrow evening for a debate show. And as always, come on.
Come on, you Spurs. Let's keep rolling.